Great. All right, you guys, welcome to Tonalism class. And I'm excited to see all the work that you guys have done this last week and to share what I've learned about glazing and painting using the black and white paintings as our base, both in oils or acrylics, and exploring the light and values using a 4-value landscape system made famous by who?
Carlson.
Carlson, thank you so much. Carlson. Great. Well, anyways, very good to see you. I'm glad you guys could join us. I got a number of emails from people who are saying they'll be in and out or not able to make it today. So I do appreciate you guys letting me know ahead of time. And I also have a new painting behind me. There's a gray one back here that I'm excited to share with you guys. Maybe I'll do that really quickly here since we got it up. So working on a couple big paintings here. This one has been taking its sweet time, but this is one, yeah, you can kind of see it okay, right?
Yeah. Oh, it's beautiful. Love that.
Soft background. And then I brought in these cattails and grasses to hopefully create kind of a 3-dimensional feel to it.
Yeah,
and
lots of depth.
That has been a lot of fun for me. Good challenge.
Really beautiful.
And painting those grasses and cattails, that was a big stretch for me because they're really fine lines. And actually, let me see if I can show them to you. They're not just dark shapes. They actually go from warms to cools within the grasses, even within each grass, and trying to get a lot of detail in there. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Nice.
A really soft.
Did you use a certain brush generally on those?
I did. I actually stole my daughter's watercolor brushes. I found that they made really nice lines. I used a combination of kind of a long round. Hopefully didn't ruin my daughter's brushes. I tried to be really gentle with them. Definitely no scrubbing with, and you can tell it's a watercolor brush versus an oil painting brush simply by the size of the handle. So when you're in the art store and you're trying to figure out, is this a watercolor brush or an acrylic brush or an oil painting brush? Typically, the handle size is one of the easiest giveaways. Oil brushes, as a general rule, have much longer handles. So that's just kind of a quick little secret. Also, watercolor brushes, have much softer hairs unless you're using, specific kind of soft blending brushes for oils. So if you're using watercolor brushes for oil paints, that's okay, but they will probably get destroyed a lot quicker. They're just, generally softer. They're made to hold the water. But that was the nice thing with using this brush is I was able to kind of push down just a little bit and get it to go thicker. And then as I got down towards the end of the grasses, lift up my pressure and get this nice tips that would be a little harder with my beat up old oil painting brushes. Another brush that I used was just the oil or watercolor flats. And I was using medium and a bit of paint thinner to make it a little more runny and a little slicker. So yeah, we'll see if my daughter notices that I've used these brushes. I think I cleaned them out really well and was pretty gentle with them. I don't normally suggest going back and forth between water brushes you use with water materials like acrylics or watercolors or gouache back to oils because the brushes do get pretty funky. I usually try to keep my brushes pretty separate, but I figured that painting's big enough and hopefully, when it sells, I'll be able to buy my daughter some new watercolor brushes if I need to replace them.
Hey, Michael.
Susan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I love that painting. Did you use red, your favorite alizarin, in the sky?
It does
It has
probably.
pink, very moody.
Yeah, I imagine it does have, quinacridone red, which is the alizarin permanent. Yeah, the quinacridone red. I use, basically the same palette for most all of my paintings. So that one's probably not a whole lot different. In the grasses, there are more of the oxide reds, kind of the browny reds, because I wanted it to stay kind of reed like, the grasses have kind of that dry reed like color to them, where they're kind of brown, they're kind of green, they're kind of, especially trying to figure out how do they look in the shadows versus when the light's peeking around them. So yeah, good question.
May I ask what kind of paints, what brand of paints you use in the oxide reds and stuff? Is that Rembrandt or Winsor and Newton?
Yeah, gambling actually for me.
Oh, gambling.
But I do like the gambling paints a lot, but I think any of them are probably fine. I'm not too specific. There's definitely some colors that I very much prefer, like the Indian yellow. I pretty much only buy from gambling. Yeah, there's a couple colors like that, but a lot of times I'll just go and buy what is available, because not all art stores carry all brands. And I found that they generally work pretty well together. Some are thicker and some are oilier. Some of them have more binders in them, which, can be annoying. But for the most part, I find most oil paints are pretty great and work pretty well. So, yeah.
Gotta leave now, so I'll be watching you later.
Okay, well, great job. Thank you for turning in your assignments and have fun today.
Okay. Thank
Great.
you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's see if we can pop over to Facebook real quick. It's interesting without the two screens, trying to figure out where is the let's see. Trying to find it on my computer. There we go. Okay, great. All right, everybody's able to see our beautiful Facebook page here.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, great. So yeah, I just loaded a couple more references into the references to paint from section. They are, unfortunately, they don't pop up to the top. They are at the very end. We have 208 of them to look at now, so that's a lot. And Linda, with your beautiful sunsets and stuff, if you'd ever like to share, or Diane or Susan with your different photos, or any of you guys, if you'd like to share any, feel free to share them into our media section. Again, with the knowledge that anything you share, any of the students can use. So you don't have to, of course, but yeah, Linda again goes out every day on these walks and takes all these beautiful skyscape paint photos and stuff. They're wonderful. But anyways, I loaded a bunch of them there. I also added them to the email, or the post I put on here. They're underneath the number of the ones that I thought might kind of work for the 4 values within the landscape. So little shortcuts for you there. And a little note on glazing and a website link if you wish to visit that. So a little bit about glazing there, and let's go to see your guys' work. And I'm just going to quickly talk about a couple because we do have a lot to cover at the easel today. So no disrespect if I don't talk about yours. In fact, actually, I guess I could ask you who maybe I didn't talk about last week that would like to have, if they turned in something. Linda, great. Which one is yours, Linda?
All the way on the right, over on the top line.
This one?
Yeah, that one, and the next one. That one and the one that was next to it, that one.
Okay.
I don't like the bottom of the cloud formation. It's too hard. I'm my own worst enemy here. Oh my God.
No worries. You can absolutely fix and change everything. And I'll show you about that today. When we go in and we glaze, we're just going to lay in an undercolor. And then you're able to literally come in and soften edges and do all, imagine this is just like your pencil drawing.
Okay.
You know, if you ever have done a drawing underneath your painting, whether it be watercolors or whatever else, imagine this is like that, but a
Okay.
little more advanced, because what have you done? You've established your design and your value structure. So sometimes when I do this, it is almost super sloppy. Like I'm not going to see hardly any of this painting underneath, but what it's doing is it's allowing me to get a foothold and hopefully we didn't lose Linda there. Yeah, it's just a great base to build our painting on top of. This does look a little dark. It could very easily be the photo.
No, it's
So
dark.
that's something I've noticed about mine. I mentioned it last class that the acrylics do dry darker. I'm sure you guys all kind of noticed that. It's something I'm constantly battling, and I intended to go back in and lighten my painting, especially in the ground plane area, because it's going to get another step darker when we add in our glazing colors. So just so you know, when doing underpainting in the grisaille method, grisaille, whatever you want to call it, the black and white, it is good to go a value or two lighter everywhere, because
Okay.
it is going to get darker. The acrylics are going to dry darker than you think. And when you go in and glaze, even if it's a bright yellow, it's going to get a little bit darker, right? Just because you're simply adding color over the top. So beautifully done, nice design, nice shapes. I think this could be very dynamic, very interesting. You're gonna have a lot of opportunity to have a fluctuation in color and temperature here from the bottom of the sky up towards the top. You can add, you know, some blue, purple, grays back here to push this back. You have a lot of options here. So I think it's great. I think you got a lot of very nice beginning.
Should I
I'll be-
lighten the dark in the foreground up close?
Yeah,
So
but you can do that again with your oil paints, which is what
Okay.
I'm going to do, because that's what I meant to do, is to go back and lighten my acrylic painting. But I kind of decided, you know what? My computer just broke. I don't have time. And also I can show you guys, how I would go about doing that with, you know, an overly dark ground area, or overly dark anywhere. Like I noticed the top of your sky is very, very dark. You know, and that can totally work. It can be really moody and really dynamic and really interesting, but it might be darker than you intended. And so don't worry, because we can always add white to our oil paints and lighten it back up, or yellow, or whatever lighter colors you want.
Okay.
That makes sense, everybody?
Yeah.
Great.
Yes.
All right, very nice. I see these are going to work wonderfully, Linda. You've got a lot of space to play. I love your little soft edges and stuff like that. You're going to have a good time. This is going to be a lot of fun for you. I do want you guys again to know that this is going to be the first time you're doing this for most of you, or for many of you,
Yeah.
especially the students that haven't been in my classes before. And know that there's a bit of a learning curve, just like everything else. It's not going to work out probably perfectly the first time. We are going to be adding a bit of medium to it. So however you choose. Is this yours as well, Linda?
That was it before I reworked it.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
I
Yeah, it
posted
seems-
it and then I looked at it and I said, oh my God, I can't leave that. Oh my God. So
yeah, I like the softer lines. That's much more organic, and this is very dynamic. And you know, boy, does this painting scream out for attention, which can be useful. But yeah, I do like what your changes are. This one seems brighter, which is funny.
yeah.
But again, I think this could be your photo, because I imagine in your actual painting, this is actually pretty white.
Yes, it is light. It's very light.
Okay,
This
so
is,
that's just the photo, and I can't
This is
adjust it
it.
on Facebook.
this
But
is it right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it is pretty white in here. The light is
can you hold
very,
it up one more time? Oh yeah. Okay, much lighter, much brighter. Okay, great. You're gonna have a good time. You got a lot of range in there.
and are my Queen Anne's lace is there too much of them?
So I'm squinting my eyes. I don't know if you can see me on there. I'm squinting my eyes at them. The thing is I like to try to group them a little bit. These are kind of equidistant, so it looks kind of like polka dots.
Okay.
Um,
we can fix
so
that.
when you can, to link a couple and make them, look so that you can vary your distances a little bit. I'd probably look at my painting and give it exactly the same critique that I'm giving yours. But yeah, just look for the naturalness in nature, and where you
Okay.
can mimic it or where you can make it look a little bit. That would be my only thing. And again, you're gonna be fine, because with the oils, you can come right over the top. The oils we're gonna paint transparently in the beginning, and then we can paint opaquely, meaning thick, where you're covering things just fine. So you can put in more Queen Anne's lace, or you could put one like here to bind these, or whatever.
Yeah,
Just so they're not so spotty, I guess.
okay, thanks. And there's an X in it, and I didn't even see that until I was like halfway done with it, and I'm going,
Yeah, the treasure is right here.
yeah, I didn't plan it, it just happened.
That's all right. That's what happens when you paint as a pirate. X
Yeah.
marks the spot.
That's it.
Nice, but it does
Thank
have a good sense of motion. These lines are all pretty straight. The one thing I personally liked about the reference was that it had this kind of soft,
Yeah,
sloping, kind of rounded hill. Not that, I mean, you're totally welcome, and I urge you all to change and, make it your own. But this does all of a sudden feel very straight and
yeah, falling
so,
off the earth kind of thing.
well, yeah, it's just very, when it's soft and sloping, it slows us down. It slows the viewer down. It kind of, when you have these kind of straight lines, don't you kind of want to just like you're racing through it?
Yeah, I think right in the middle, I could lift that a little, right in there, right in the middle of the, yeah, right in there.
Yeah,
Like-
I would probably cover this line a little more, or
Okay,
I would see about possibly sloping the, I don't know. I mean, it's up to you.
yeah.
Yours
Okay.
just doesn't look like it's on a hill. Yours looks like you're looking in a field, which is probably a little truer to the experience I had, actually, because I looked back through a bunch of references. It may have been you that was like, I need the reference. And when I went to look for them, I couldn't find it, because I was like, where is there a soft sloping hill? And in fact, it's really not. It's actually a pretty flat field in the park. Just
Yeah.
only one photo, for whatever reason, made it look as if there was a little bit of a domed hill. So interesting. All right. Thank you, Linda. Great job. Anybody else that I didn't get to last week? Michelle, where is yours? Is that this one?
Yep.
Wow, look at all that texture.
That
that?
one, and then I have one other one, but that one, I think my trail is zigzaggy. Talking about too straight, that one ended up being too like a drunken sailor went traversing across the field.
You know what? I think if you just kind of let this line disappear, that it's fine, because the trails definitely do that, and then it'll kind of go up to here. You know what I mean? Like my eye just kind of wants to follow it, even though it's kind of lost. So I don't think this first couple of zigzags, I think actually is interesting and kind of slows us down, gets us meandering through it. And I bet you anything, once you get this kind of painted, that these Queen Anne's lace are going to become, because remember, lines are about optical, our eye connecting things. And you got this kind of line of Queen Anne's lace right here. That actually becomes a trail or a line that our eye will follow. Not a trail that we would walk on, but a trail that our line follows. So you kind of notice like lines like that are kind of imposed there. And then of course you've got the strong line here. All these things kind of become, trails for our eyes to follow. And this is really quite subtle. Like I actually didn't see it until I've been looking at your painting for a couple seconds. So it doesn't really bother me, but yeah, I mean, it becomes a little repetitive. It literally kind of lines up with the corners and stuff like that. So I think if you just kind of let this one disappear, and maybe we go back to this one, or You know, I don't know, or maybe it goes back further and then you kind of hint at it over here. I think you'll be fine. Yeah, I like my meandering creeks and my meandering trails and my meandering dirt roads and all the other S curves I can find and throw into things. So not a big issue. Look at all that texture you got. I'm guessing you used one of those shop brushes to good effect too. Lots of texture in the foreground, lots of texture along the tops of the trees. Yeah, what do you think? What are your thoughts on while you were painting it or now that you're looking at it?
Well, I think, yeah, I agree with you. That's a great solution on the trail. I've never done the Queen Anne's lace before, so I did try to make them look kind of natural. And I was looking at the reference quite a bit, but I see that it is kind of a line, but I think it kind of tended to grow like that. I don't know. It's new for me, so.
No, they definitely do grow in groups, and that thusly they'll kind of create lines, you know, where there are some versus where there's none. Doesn't bother me. I think it's kind of a nice directional line. It kind of leads you back here and then up along here you go, and then a little bit into this, into the clouds. And no, there's a pretty nice movement. I mean, oftentimes when a painting has a really strong horizontal line like this, it feels very stagnant and still. And I don't mean to use stagnant in a bad word there. Very quiet and still and restful. But this actually has enough texture and enough different types of movement in it, even though they're quite subtle, that I think it really helps break that up and make it a little more interesting than, you know, just a strong horizontal line would normally be.
And then I just have one more that won't take long.
Sure. All right, so we were just here. Is it this one?
Yes.
All right, okay, great. So yeah, interesting ways to deal with it. You just took your road and moved it over, which is kind of fun. You just kind of straightened it out a little bit, and you made your clouds much more subtle than I think a lot of people did. A lot of people really played up the lights and the darks and the clouds. This is going to feel quieter and a little more naturalistic, probably a little more like we could see this on any given day versus, you know, some of our clouds, mine included, are very dynamic and kind of would be a special, like, holy cow, those clouds are crazy today. So this could be really nice. I think when you get in here, you're going to get a lot of opportunity to play. You got, you know, very nice subtlety. And again, I really nice job with texture and stuff, you know, if that's what you're after. I'm not urging all of you guys to have these super textural, you know, broken up brush strokes, but if that's something Michelle I know has been working on that for, boy, probably all of last year, kind of getting different brush strokes and working on different things. And I think it's really, I see a lot more control in it now. And I think your use of it, even though I can see it up here in the clouds, but I can tell you kind of took like what could have been these kind of marks and softened them by probably hitting them a couple times and creating smoother gradations between the lights and the darks. So it's much more quiet up here, much more calm. And then definitely our eye gets drawn into this because of these strong contrast and a strong contrast of detail to not detailed, dark to light, small shapes to big shapes. So you got a lot that's drawing our eye to this. Our eye is always going to be drawn towards contrast. Okay, whether that's light and dark, warm, cool, red, green, whatever it is, you know, color contrast, value contrast, detail contrast, all the different types, temperature contrast. So really nice. And you can keep playing that up if you want when you start adding color, or you can maybe bring using a little bit of color shift or temperature shift. You can kind of say, yeah, this is really important, but you know, let's let the eye move over here just a little bit because some of these clouds are kind of coming like this. So then our eye will kind of come up to here, over to here, and then up and through. Great.
I like painting clouds with oil so much better.
Is this acrylics or oils?
That's acrylics because you can't blend it as well as you can with oils. Is this Sauvie Island?
This is the Tualatin Bird Refuge, actually.
My son,
Highway 99.
okay. My son thought it was Sauvie's Island, and he has claimed this little black and white.
Oh, good. Well, tell him it's Savi Island and Merry Christmas, and you're off the hook. Yeah, it looks like you're painting it on paper.
Yeah, I wanted to do this before. First of all, I mean, there's, so much room for canvases, but I'm keeping a journal, writing your notes on one side and then painting on the other side.
Wow, very cool. All right. Well, very neat. Did you gesso this before or?
I did.
Okay, great.
I put a couple gesso, yeah.
So basically, you guys, if you have some, white gesso or whatever color gesso, you can gesso almost anything as long as it sticks, like plastic and things might be tough, but cardboard, if you're just kind of like, man, I don't have any canvases, but I have a bucket of gesso. Yeah, get some nice thick paper. You can gesso that. You can gesso mat boards. You can gesso all sorts of things. I've had students gesso literally just pieces of wood to paint on. So anyways, that's great. There's a number of really great painters online that I follow that go through and gesso whole sketchbooks, each page. You got to be patient because you got to gesso it and let that page dry and then gesso the next page. But it's really cool seeing their little tiny either acrylic or gouache or oil painting sketches in these sketchbooks. It's amazing the amount of effort and work these people are putting into these beautiful sketchbooks these days. But anyways, very nice. I'm going to take one more student before we move up to the easel. Anybody have a question that I maybe didn't talk to last week? Or
I'd go if you're game.
Meryl? Sure. Which one is yours?
I'm actually the one that's in the upper left-hand corner to the left of your 4-step value.
This guy here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously that's not at Savi Island or the Tualatin Bird Refuge.
I'm gonna guess this is in the Rockies in Canada.
That's close. That's actually a really good guess. It's Glacier National Park.
It is Glacier. Oh, so close.
Yeah.
Right over the hill. Right over.
So
the hill.
you're moving in the right cardinal direction, I guess.
Yeah. I like to call it the park formerly known as Glacier.
Seriously. Yeah, my husband and I go to we spend a lot of time outside, but we go to a lot of national parks. And so I have thousands of photographs of big land masses like this. And I just wanted to give some of these a try because I've never really tried them. So that's how I arrived at this. And it's still, I didn't finish it. This is an oil. And so I didn't, on that left side, there's a lake in that lower left-hand corner there. And just above that is a low ridge line. And that I didn't finish that section out because I had to be done so that it would dry. Because I figured, well, I can always just go back and paint. I'll fix it, could paint over.
Yeah, you'll totally be able to revisit that. Great.
Yeah. So that's
very cool. Do you know the artist Edgar Payne?
I've heard of the name, but it doesn't, I can't think of a picture. I'll have to look him up.
I'll see if I can find any to share with you, but otherwise, yeah, Payne, Payne.
Yeah.
He's a California impressionist. So it doesn't fit with our tonalism class. He's definitely an impressionist. But I would check out some of his work if you're interested. And then also the Canadian Seven, especially like Tom Thompson.
Yes,
if you're interested
know
in
who he
colorists.
is.
And it reminds me kind of some of their work, as well as Edgar Payne's beautiful paintings he did of the Sierras and things like that. Really nice. You got a lot of really interesting, great shapes going on, strong values. Be wary of your this almost getting to the top, but not quite there. When you frame this, it will be touching the top.
Okay.
So usually, or oftentimes, I'll kind of put my thumb down. I got a pretty big thumb, but I kind of try to keep it that because I noticed that the frame can come over about the width of my pinky. So I'll kind of go around with my pinky, and if anything's touching or going to be unfortunate, if I'm choosing, deciding I'm going to frame it, and hopefully, all of your paintings or a couple of your paintings will be frameable at the end of this class. So just aware of that. That's just something I kind of see and just get a little bit nervous about. I do it all the time. All the time. You'll see my clouds leaning right up against the top, or, different things, trees, whatever else. So just something to be aware of. And then speaking of, so I call that a tangent, where, it's going to be in this unfortunate touching thing. It'll feel like it's just kind of crammed into the space. The other thing I look at is line tangents. So you got this nice line of this hill or, rocky cliff in the background, and see how this tree bumps right up against it and this tree bumps right up against the top. What I would do is either bring them down or break that line. Just like this one breaks this line. It looks like it maybe even, in fact, at one point did bump right up against it, and then you actually saw it and kind of pulled it up. So just seeing, again, where it looks like things might be holding things up accidentally. I always am just kind of scanning my eyes for tangents and things like that. Yeah. Oh, and then my only other thing, again, really nice job. I'm not trying to pick on this too much at all, but your darks back here along the top of this mountain's probably a good mile away or maybe further. These darks are not going to be probably as dark as the darks within the shadows of the trees close to us. So oftentimes when I'm looking at, and actually we'll be talking about that today in our 4 value system. So oftentimes when I'm establishing my value structure, I will make sure that my darkest darks are within kind of the shadows that are the closest to me. Oftentimes, you can change that up, of course, when you're trying to control for the focal point or where you want the viewer to look. But if you're trying to play with the idea of perspective and depth, often your darkest darks will be closer and kind of within the shadow forms, within the dark shadows. Then as things get further away, they'll get a little lighter, a little cooler. Oftentimes, again, these can all change according to the light source and the time of day and everything else. But just kind of as a general rule, if I had Photoshop, and I could pull it in, what I would do is just quickly kind of lighten this up by just kind of running, taking a gray that I liked and bringing it across. And all of a sudden these trees would want to come forward. Because as it plays right now, they feel, if I put my hand up and cover the left side of the scene, these feel like they're all almost just kind of at the same distance from us. You have variation in size. We know that that's a mountain and it's smaller than it would be if it was close, but the value structure is wanting it to kind of flatten out a little bit. That makes sense? And you'll be able to completely play with that with your oils by simply bringing over some bluer, grayer, or whatever, you have your photo reference, whatever kind of effect is going on to create this sense of atmosphere or depth that's happening between these close trees, the mid-ground hill here, and your distant mountain. Okay.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Thanks.
And then sometimes you do get ultra pristine, super clear days where, the sense of depth isn't there. Like living in the Pacific Northwest, we have no problem with, moisture and fog and lots, atmosphere to spare. Linda, living in the desert, probably has less of that, and where things far away will seem like they're not as far away because they are more crisp and the colors will appear a little warmer at a distance. When I paint in the desert, in fact, like when I go down to Arizona for events and things, I will oftentimes end up bringing in my Oregon mentality to their desert scenes and still pushing things further away, just because I like the idea of real estate in my paintings, the ideas of depth. That makes sense, Meryl?
Yeah, completely.
Great. Well, nice job. Really, some nice complicated shapes and forms and lines. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see it. Great. Anybody else really urgently, or shall we start painting and glazing? All right. Stop share. And I'm going to go ahead and. Great. All right. So set up here at the easel, and just going to grab a couple brushes, different types, different sizes. When I'm glazing a big area, it's kind of nice to have a big brush. A lot of times I will be doing spot glazing where I'll have different colors in different areas. So smaller brush versus if I was just glazing the whole thing one color. And we'll get to experiment with different applications of that. When this is an oil painting, so I can glaze with just, paint, and just what I want to look for on the back is like, this is quinacridone red here. I want to flip it over and I want to look on the back. Can't see here because it's in the fold, but I'm looking for the word transparent or semi-transparent on the back of my paints. You can glaze with semi-opaque as well, but it will definitely cover more of your underpainting. So transparent will look just like colored glass on top. Semi-transparent, a little more foggy glass. Semi-opaque will look like frosted glass. And then when you get to the opaque colors, like the cadmiums and things like that, it definitely becomes a lot harder to glaze because they're so dense that you'll end up just kind of covering areas. If you do need, like, that's just the color you need is like a red cadmium, and you want to glaze with it, you're just probably going to either have to make the paint thinner by spreading it out further or adding more medium to it. And when I say medium, it can be a little bit of the paint thinner, like the Gamsol, or my personal favorite lately has been the Galkid gel. Again, I like it because it, it's in a tube, it doesn't dry up. It can go on thicker or thinner. The Galkid medium, which is more of a liquid, which I unfortunately don't think I have any left, is a great one. Liquin is another name of a medium that works really good for glazing. A little more of an odd one is Neo McGilp. If you are doing your underpaintings with a lot more texture and ridges, you may actually want to use something like Neo McGilp. It works better for, like, if I'm glazing into kind of more of an impressionistic, thick, juicy brush strokes. The Neo McGilp does a good job of getting into the valleys and, the thick and the thin of the paint. Robert Gamblin told me that this is actually his favorite. The guy who created Gamblin Paints, Neo McGilp, is his favorite of the mediums that he made. And it is a fun one. It's quite thick. So if you're using a Galkid liquid or Neo McGilp or Liquin, here's a little hint for you, because if you've ever bought one and not used it, for a while, it can create a dry layer right on the top and rendering it almost unusable. There's a couple different things you can do. You can actually take like your Gamsol and fill it up so that there's no air inside of there, or a layer of the Gamsol that sits on top and it doesn't allow the air to get to this top layer and dry. Another thing I've heard of people doing is literally dropping in marbles, and just every time they use it, they add a little more marbles and it keeps it full. My simple trick I do is I just simply store it upside down. So my storage area right over there, that cabinet, has all my mad scientist, all my different mediums and paints and everything else. And I just store it upside down. So if it does happen to dry, it dries on the bottom of it. So when I flip it upright to pour it out, this part is still liquid. If you're using the Galkid gel or Galkid liquid or the Liquin, sometimes you'll get to it a couple months later after using it, and it appears very dark. It does tend to darken in the bottle, especially after it does get some air on it. You can actually go and set that in your windowsill, and the sun will actually bleach it back. Or just use it, and you'll notice that that darkness, unless you're using it really thick, doesn't actually affect it very much. My other suggestion for when using mediums is I don't use more than about 25% medium to paint. That's another reason I like to focus. Another reason I like to use transparent colors, because if you're using an opaque color and trying to make it into a transparent color, you'll end up using a lot of medium. The other thing you're going to see me do is this. You'll hear this noise when I'm glazing a lot of the times. Can you hear that scrubbing noise? So I will put on my glaze really thin by kind of pushing it and moving it around, and so that it thins out, not only because of the medium, but by the fact that I'm spreading it so thin on there. Okay, you are more than welcome to mix a little bit of like your Galkid gel and a little bit of paint thinner, like even you can do that almost to a 50-50 mixture, and then adding just a little bit of that mixture to your paints to create a medium. A lot of them, my Galkid gel, my Neo McNeill, my solvent-free gel, they will all add a shine to the paint. So as I'm putting on the colors, the more medium that I have on it, when it dries, the more shiny it will be. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on what you're after. So just to be aware of that. So if I don't want it to be shiny, I might add a little bit more paint thinner, which will take the shine down. Another thing that you can add to it to knock the shine down is actually the cold wax medium. So you can mix cold wax medium with your glazes. In fact, you can use cold wax medium as a glaze. I haven't done that very much, but you know, if you have some, you might want to experiment with that. The other thing, this is a lot of information about the mediums, so hopefully it's not too much, is that the different types of mediums have different drying speeds. In fact, you probably even have seen ones that say quick dry, or like the Japan dryer, or different things like that. So just being aware of that. I like the Galkid gel because it does dry quicker, makes my paints dry a little faster. It does add a little bit of a shine, which when the paint is actually dry, it still looks a little bit fresher, meaning it retains its color. It doesn't, when oil paints dry and they dry matte, not shiny, they will look a little less vibrant. So you get to decide, you know, some paintings look really great, very matte and very kind of not vibrant, and I want that kind of earthy thing. And other ones, I actually want them to have that vibrancy and that life in the paint. And with a little bit of medium, the oil paints will look almost like that freshness you put on when they're still wet. The solvent-free gel, which, you know, a lot of you may use because it definitely has a lot less chemicals, much less smell to it. It's a really nice medium. It does not change the drying time of oil paints, either slower or faster. It is kind of just a medium that you can add. So if you're wanting a slower dry time to your glazing or whatever else you're doing, you may want to contemplate that. Also, again, if you're working in a small studio space or small home or whatever, and you really don't like the smells, the chemical smells that come with some of the different mediums, then the solvent-free gel may be something you want to contemplate. Okay, that was a lot. Questions?
Can you review the cold wax, what you would use that for?
Sure, let me grab a can of it. So cold wax medium, at least the ones I have, come in cans. So you would pop the top off and it will be really thick in there, and it's kind of got a creamy, I don't have a screwdriver here, otherwise I'd pop it open. But I'll use my palette knife to reach in there and pull out however much I need. It's very dense. It's kind of like working with really thick honey. But you can mix that with, let's say I was using Galkid gel and I didn't want the super shininess of Galkid gel. I can mix a little bit of the cold wax medium, let's say 20% cold wax medium, 80% Galkid gel together, and it would knock the shine down. Yeah, does anybody here paint with cold wax medium at all as a medium? It's an interesting thing. I go through little spells of it where I really like it, and it does, it definitely appears much more matte. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the milk paints that they sell at craft stores, and it kind of has that almost chalkboard look to it. It has more of that kind of a feel to it.
I've used it over finished pieces where, I mean, the underpainting was, it was on board and it was using kind of a plaster to create texture, and then using acrylics as the finish, and then used basically the same way that you would like take furniture wax to wax over a piece of furniture. That's how it was used, and it creates, in that context, it created like a really nice, just slight soft glow, as opposed to kind of that shinier look that some of the other mediums have. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. It almost has kind of like that eggshell finish to it.
Yes, that's how I would describe it. And I mean, again, it was over, I mean, oils have like a little bit of shine to them, and generally speaking, at least in my experience, there's always a little bit of something there, but with that plaster underlay, it was very matte. And so the cold wax kind of gave the same, it gave it a little bit of a glow. It helped with the depth as well, I felt like, on the colors.
Because of its density, it allows the light to bounce around within it. You know what? I'll experiment with that on the next painting. The next one I'm going to glaze, I will glaze with cold wax, because why not, right? We're just playing, we're experimenting, we're trying new things. I don't think I've ever done that in any of my classes, so I will do that for the one with the Queen Anne's lace in it, the kind of soft hill, because it'll have that soft feel, which will kind of, you know what I mean? Like it'll help push the feeling that I want in that painting, I think. So for now, for this one, I'm going to use the Galkid gel. But yeah, thank you. That is a very good description of it and a great use for it. And you're right, it has that kind of, like when you add wax over furniture. Oh man, it's almost empty. There we go. Nice and thick. If I put like the medium, like I just couldn't put it there, right? It would just run right down if I was using the liquid. The wax, I could do this. The McNeill will actually run a little more. I'm going to put it underneath it. And you'll see, I'm going to put it on my table and then put it up with a palette knife. But I really like the McNeill as well. I just, for whatever reason, don't use it. It doesn't come in a tube. Didn't even stay on my knife. It just dropped right off. Yeah, it's going to slowly, you'll see this one will just slowly probably start moving down the surface here. My favorite two colors for glazing personally are the transparent oxide red or the earth brown. And Indian yellow. Those are both super transparent colors. The quinacridone red. So this is my oxide brown right there, or transparent earth red is what Gamblin calls it. Other brands call it oxide red or oxide brown a lot of times. Put up my quinacridone red, which is a kind of has the alizarin color of like alizarin. Let's bring it down a little bit so we can see it. There it is. I've got some Indian yellow on my big palette here, so I'll just grab a little bit of that. Maybe a little more. So again, what I've done is I've got a whole collection of paints here on my palette. These are all, I just kind of went through and looked for paints that say transparent or semi-transparent. This actually is only when it says semi-transparent. All the rest say transparent, besides the white. White's almost always fairly opaque unless you buy a transparent white, which they do sell. Do I have any out and available? Thought I
Would
had
that
some.
be useful for like foggy effects?
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. So, you know, when you're doing this, you may want to kind of reach into your box or, you know, your collection of paints and just pull out the ones that are on the transparent side to start with. The manganese hue also says transparent, as does the ultramarine blue also says transparent. I've even got an ultramarine violet here, which I never use. Didn't even know I had this tube. I don't know how old it is. Yeah. So, oh, and then if you're wanting a really dynamic, interesting color, the phthalo turquoise is actually transparent. A lot of the phthalo colors, I mean, a lot of the turquoise colors are actually quite opaque, but the phthalo turquoise is a transparent. It is very strong, just so you know. And that's actually the case with a lot of the transparent colors are actually very strong pigment loads, but they're transparent. One of my favorite new colors that I've been using lately is called gold ochre. Ochre on its own is a very opaque color, but the gold ochre by Gamblin, I'm not sure by other brands, does come out as a transparent. In fact, I think I might use that probably on the next painting. Let me just squeeze out a couple other colors here so we have kind of a collection. So that's my ultramarine blue. And phthalo blue. What would you guys like to see? What color would you guys like to see? We can do kind of a pink and purple on this one because I'm going to be doing more of the browns and golds on the next one. And then on the third one, it's going to be Indian yellow and some of the red. So yeah, maybe we'll do this one with blues, even though that's not really the color we think of so much with, oftentimes when we're thinking about tonalist paintings, we think more of the earth tones and stuff, but actually blues can be a really effective way to kind of tone a canvas. So I'm going to go ahead, mix a little bit of paint thinner with my medium, which in this case is my Galkyd gel. And the truth is I could mix my Galkyd gel and my Naomi Gilp if I wanted to. Most of the mediums, especially if you're using within the same brand, like Gamblin promotes that you can use, you know, cold wax and Naomi Gilp together and Gamsol together, as long as you're kind of mixing them. I can put on a little bit of it really quick if I want to, or I can just mix it into the paint. But this will help me add a little bit of a slickness to the surface, and it will also create tiny, tiny bit of separation. So if I make a mistake and I want to get in with my paper towels and erase it by adding just a little bit of the medium into it, I buy myself just a touch of time to keep working. So then I will take a little more and I'm going to mix that in with my ultramarine blue. Doesn't take much color mixed with the medium. So you can already see it starting to doing what it's doing. I didn't put it fully evenly, but I'm going to come back in with another brush and kind of spread it around. You see how transparent that is? How it's just starting to add a little bit of color to it, kind of harmonizing my underpainting. All right, so I could do it kind of spotty like that. Let's go ahead and pretend I wanted just to do the whole thing blue, making it into, I don't know, maybe more of a nocturne all of a sudden. You want to make sure your underpainting is fully dry. Otherwise, you are going to be moving the paint around from underneath. It'll kind of reactivate, start to lift and move and smear and do things. So this painting has been drying for what, 2 weeks, I think, since we last did it. This was from the very first class. No, second class. So there you go. I've kind of just glazed the whole thing. All of a sudden the black and white is now a blue and, you know, white. I can take my paper towel and get back into it. I want to pick up and lighten some areas a little bit. So it's very versatile. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of quinacridone red and see what happens. I can do 2 colors pretty easily, and it'll create a third color, right? You can already probably guess what third color will start to appear. It'll start to go to purple, right? Because I've got blue and red. I know my light's kind of coming from over here softly, so I'm gonna take it along kind of the horizon line, and I might kind of use little bits of that light. Maybe I'll bring a little bit into the sky, a little bit down into that water that's in the thin band back there, right? Looks pretty hideous. I can take my paper towel again, and I could either do this with a brush or with my paper towel, and I can start to lift that as well. Isn't that kind of nice? All of a sudden, he's kind of got this little soft glow back there. And already just that little bit of light, little bit of color really kind of starts to introduce a little bit more interest. So oftentimes that's about what I would do. And I can either let that dry and then come back in and paint over that. So what I've done is just kind of created a harmonized, toned background with my black and white painting. And this will dry quite quickly, like probably in a couple of hours, it'll be dry enough to start painting into, because of that medium and its quickened drying time. And the fact that the paint is very thin on there. There's hardly any paint at all. But I can also, let's go ahead and add a little white up here. I can also just jump right into it, and I can start painting. Because it's so thin, it's not going to be too slick. I can start to paint opaquely, meaning thicker, already over the top of that. So I'm going to push my heels back a little bit back there. Want them to cool down. I love the purple though, so I want to play with a little bit of that, but it's a little too warm of a purple, so I just keep adding a little more blue. You can see now as my color goes from a cooler purple towards the warm and eventually almost that hot pink. So now I can bring this cool blue, gray, purple color that I've got, and I'm going to push these hills back. As I get closer to the source of the sun, I can warm them up a little bit. Do the same thing back here, but because these trees are a little closer, I'm going to let them get a little bit darker, less white mixed in. And this is going to be kind of a blue and purple kind of monochromatic painting with little splashes of pink. If this blue is too vibrant, or this kind of color here is too vibrant, I can always just mix a touch of like a yellow. Let's bring up a little bit of an opaque yellow. And the opposite color of purple is yellow. This purple is red and blue. The opposite would be yellow. By adding a little bit of that into there, it will neutralize that color so that it's not so vibrant if I want to kind of gray it down a little bit. I've got to be aware though, it is going to, that yellow is going to lighten that color slightly. I can bring a little bit of that red across the top as if it's picking up a little bit of that light as well. Shall I zoom in a little bit? Can you guys see it okay, or is that? All right, same thing here. I'm just going to take this little hill or this little plant, make it a little darker, add a little bit of yellow so there's not just a bright purple. I got a little too dark, so I can just kind of lighten that up, just bring in a little of the other color that I mixed so that's not so vibrant. And I'm also going to think about my uprights in here, which we'll talk about again when we talk about the 4 values of landscape painting here. And I can just kind of bring in little hints of the dark. There as well. Let's make our grass as kind of a pale blue color going towards kind of a pink, maybe a touch of green. Let's see what happens there. So as I get over here, I'll let them get a little pinker, but I want to bring in some hints of that. I can put the paint on thick and cover up what I have there, or I can spread it thinly using a little bit of the medium or whatever else and let that texture that's underneath from the acrylic, or I guess it was an oil painting, show through. So I've got my options now where I can use thicker, more opaque paint, or I can allow just thinner washes and to let that texture continue to show through. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up a dark because I don't want this blue. You see how vibrant that is? And it really just grabs the attention. I don't like that. I was thinking maybe that blue would work. So I'm going to take my blue, add a little bit of red to make it a purple, and add my yellow, and it should make a dark. Maybe I need a little more yellow.
Michael, we cannot see your whole palette.
Okay, I'll have to zoom back out a little bit there.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So you can see how dark that color is that I just made. And that will allow for a little bit more diversity in my values. It's just kind of fun to see what colors end up kind of showing up here. You know, warm up the grasses as if they're picking up a little bit of that light as well.
Looks good. Great.
A little bit of pink across the tops of the grasses that are facing towards the sun a little more. Back to cools as I come down a little closer. Also, you see how these darks really want to come forward? This one may be even a little too dark. I can kind of lighten that up just because it's grabbing a lot of attention right now. I'm not sure that little bush was as useful as I hoped, having it right there against the edge. Anyways, I can just keep adding color and adding texture or whatever else as much as I want. I just got to be aware that once I've added more than 2 colors together, my odds of the colors getting muddy, right? As soon as you add all 3 primaries together, it goes to brown, right? Yellow plus blue makes green, plus red makes brown. Red plus blue makes purple, plus yellow makes brown, okay? So just being aware that if you want kind of cleaner, more pristine, more dramatic colors, you're gonna wanna keep them a little bit separated. There's times like in these grasses where some browns and, you know, I don't care that it gets a little more earthy, but if I did that in the sky, it might not be as nice. I might not want muddier color up there. The cool thing is, if I change my mind and don't like it, I can simply take my paper towel, just a touch of paint thinner, and I can get it back. I can wipe back away. Sometimes I'll use that just to get back to glow and to warmth. The other thing is, let me grab a clean brush, is oftentimes in the sky, I will definitely add more opaque paint. So let's grab some white here. Let's grab some pink or quinacridone red, making it a pink. So now I've made an opaque color. Got kind of dark. And add just a touch of medium by just dipping the very corner of my brush in there. And I can bring that right over the top of what I've done here. So if when you're glazing and all of a sudden you're like, oh man, it really got too dark and or my underpainting was too dark, just know that I can use opaque paint right over the top. It's not a one-way street. You can go right back to opaque, nice thick paint, no problem. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add some Indian yellow to that and more white and actually make a nice, need a lot more white. It's wanting to go very yellow. A little bit of medium, just a touch, just to make it kind of fast and slick. And I'm just with a very light touch, just going to drag that across the top. So there you go. Much more, hopefully, much more interesting than when we started, just a little black and white. Grab a little tiny brush here so I can poke some warm colors onto the edges of this little bush here that I kind of wish I hadn't put there in the first place. And I guess I could just erase it. Let's see what happens here. I'm going to take my paper towel. And I'm just going to wipe back all the paint that I just added on top of that. And let's see if I can erase it using my opaque paint. So I'll go back to the peaks. Let's just bring that on top. There we go. Isn't that nice? That's better. Just using the opaque quality of the paint and then back to the lighter. Was never there. Just pruned that bush. So yeah, and let's pretend that I don't quite love what's going on in my sky. Like I want maybe a cloud that's a little more dramatic. Not a problem. With opaque paint, I can just kind of simply, I can just cover right across the top. Just by simply lightly dragging it, not with a lot of pressure. So that's why I like glazing sometimes is you can just, again, just like doing the underpainting is a really fast way to get your values and your design and your structure. This is a fast way to get your painting covered. I can always just step back for a little bit, see how this is looking, and come back in and just keep painting opaquely or with, normal oil painting technique right over the top. Great. What do you think? That makes sense?
Yes,
Great.
it's beautiful painting, beautiful.
But it makes it a lot more interesting. That was a very quiet, kind of still painting when it was just black and white. And now by just adding a little bit of color, a little bit of transition from the warms to the cools and from the lights to the darks, it's much, hopefully, more provocative.
Yeah,
It's
subtle.
still not punching you in the face. It's not super high drama or anything else. There's still kind of a relaxing quality to it, I hope, both in the design, the horizontal and the slowly meandering S-curve, as well as the colors are just not so punchy. It's not so dramatic. Great. All right, let's put that guy down. Actually, let me bring the blues because when I put those other colors in and wiped it away, now it's a very gray up there. So let me get back to a little bit of more bluish up there, just to. But I love the fact that with a little paper towel, a little bit of paint thinner, Gamsol, or whatever you're using, you can really, if the painting's really dry or acrylic, you can really get back to where you were. Like you can experiment and play for a little while. Yes, eventually the colors will kind of stain, they'll kind of soak in. But for a while, maybe 10, 15 minutes, you are pretty free to play, pretty free to experiment and try different things. You know, this probably won't show up on the camera, but I'm going to go ahead and lighten up. All right, through here, one more touch. Zoom in, see if that helps. You can see it. Always another good test I like to do is turning off the light. Just to see if my values and things are reading. Isn't that interesting? How only that band of light there is showing now. Focus. All right. Great. Fun, fun, fun. And again, even right now, even though I've added opaque paint, I could still take my paper towel to this and get it back to almost the beginning if I really was like, you know what? Purple was a bad choice. I should have done this orange, or I should have done this green, or whatever else. See if this will hold it in place with just the screws back there. Yeah, good. I think that's pretty sound. If it falls, it'll fall right in a big pile of blue paint beneath it. But otherwise I'll have a lip. If I put it back in the back of this, where it's supposed to go, there'll be a lip in front of it, which I don't like. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to go grab a screwdriver so I can get into this can of cold wax. The fog outside is so beautiful. I totally got stopped at the window. Lights coming through and rays out there. So anyways, when you open it up, the cold wax is in there. It's really thick. I'll take my palette knife, pull it out. Big old dab will do ya. Looks like Crisco. And yeah, the paints, you just kind of mix them in there with it. So I've kind of got to decide if I want to do this more as a tonal, like all in kind of goldy brown colors, or if I actually want to make some blues up here, maybe in the sky. I think I do. So this one won't be so much a tonalist painting because it's going to have golden grasses. I might bring a little bit of greens and some more blues into here. So just bear with me. I know I'm not painting a tonalist painting, but I just want to show, just making sure my brush is nice and clean. Take a little bit of the wax, and I'm going to mix that with the gold ochre. Make sure, yep, that's the color. Doesn't look transparent when it's in a whole big pile up here. Bring that down so you guys can see the palette a little better. Oh, I know, I'm zoomed in, that's why. I'm going to mix that with cold wax. And let's just get that into our grasses and see what happens. Ah, quite warm, quite gold. Feels like sunshine all of a sudden on our grasses, doesn't it? Very gold. I can tell it's more opaque when I get it over the darks. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover all my 3 areas, my sky, my trees, and my grasses, very almost cartoonishly simple. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to give them some nuance. I'm going to make green by using that gold and mixed with blues. And right now I'm not quite worrying about like painting over the tops of my beautiful white Queen Anne's lace because I'm going to bring those back. I can either do it with my oil paints or with my handy dandy jar of Q-tips. I could just come back in and just clean those back off. Also open up those sky holes back if I want to. All right, so now I've got green and gold. Clean this brush, or a smarter person would just grab a new brush and keep, like maybe I would have 3 brushes, one for my grass area, one for my tree area, and one for my sky. Let's go to this beautiful manganese blue, very spring, bright, nice, clear blue sky. Let's see what happens. Yep, a smarter person would have grabbed a new brush. It's the sky is wanting to go a little bit green because I didn't clean it completely. So instead of pushing that around, I'm just going to wipe that back off because I don't want a green sky. No problem, right? Just back to where I just was. A lot of times it's easier to fix it right away. Just cleaning my brush a little better, hopefully. And that blue is really light. So I'm going to go ahead and mix my manganese and my ultramarine, which will make it look like kind of a mid blue, not so bluey green and not so purpley blue. A little more wax. As it gets towards the horizon and over towards the right side, I'm going to let it get a little bit more towards the manganese blue. So just adding a little more of that. So the wax is kind of fun. It's definitely a little stickier. It's not slipping and sliding as much as when I use the Galkid gel or the Neo Miguel. It is a little bit of a slower glaze. Meaning the brush strokes are a little stickier. They don't go quite as far. They don't have the slip quality. And you can kind of decide, you know, does this allow me to have a little more control? Maybe I like that. So that's kind of nice already, isn't it? Just a little bit of color, just kind of simplistic. And
what would happen if you did add some of the Galkid or the Neo, whatever, to that?
it would just make it a little slipperier and a little bit shinier. And probably speed up the drying time just a touch, I imagine.
One thing, Michael, about cold wax, because I've used it a lot, is that you're always supposed to use it on a firm support, not on a stretched canvas, because it will crack.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a board. Yeah, that is a great point. Did you guys all hear that or understand that? You would want to do it on a board or a canvas that's on a board. Because yeah, the cold wax does have a tendency to crack a little more as it ages and dries. It can become a little on the brittle side. The other thing is you want to keep it out of a hot car so it doesn't start to melt. I've heard about stories about that, plein air painters using it and then putting their paintings into a hot car and having some interesting things happen. I'm gonna add a little bit darker blue up here. Just a little bit. I'm going to take and wipe my brush, and then I'm just going to use that little bit of paint because it's pretty intense that I just added. Just so that, again, it feels like there's a little bit more atmosphere on the bottom, or it's a little lighter and the sky's getting a little darker as it goes up. I'm going to take some of that blue and I'm going to add just a touch of white to it. And I'm going to push back these trees. A little more white. There we go. All of a sudden there's a sense of depth, right? You saw it was just a band of color. Michelle, maybe you want to think about that because you have that strong horizontal band on yours. And you see how that all of a sudden, even though I don't have a real obvious trail, but now it does have a trail, right? It just all of a sudden by opening up that space, we want to take this walk, hopefully, right? Want to get back there a little bit. And I'm darken that just a touch. Get back to some of those greens, and I'm going to push this next tree back, but not as far. See how that falls back behind this band of trees? So this tree is this grouping is closer than this one. This one is closer than that one, but this one is my closest. So maybe I want to cool these down just a touch, maybe into the shadows. Isn't that interesting? How all of a sudden now this tree wants to come forward because the shadows are warmer and darker. These shadows are getting a little bluer, a little cooler, a little bit lighter. And again, it's all comparative. Right now I can push these darks. So I'm going to do the inverse where I was lightening these. I'm going to actually get to this pile of dark over here and watch what happens, how this hopefully will bring this band of trees a little bit closer. What I could do is put the darkest area right in here because this is kind of my focal area. And because I lightened it, now when I put a dark there, there we go. Hopefully that kind of brings us the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to darken the bottom of these grasses because right now this is my darkest dark. In fact, I made that too dark because there are going to be some dark shadows in here. So I'm going to just kind of smudge that a little bit so it's not quite as extremely dark. There we go, just kind of softening up some of those darks. And so I'm going to mix my ultramarine blue, this time with my oxide red or earth red. Again, get some cold wax into it. That's one of my favorite ways to make darks because I can make them cool or warm very quickly. I should probably actually have my reference out so I can kind of see what's going on. But you see how all of a sudden these grasses down here in the shadows starting to want to come forward. Hopefully we're creating a real sense of a three-dimensionality on this surface. And I may want to save this until kind of the end because I actually want to get in and add some other colors. To another color that wants to come forward are reds. So I'm going to add a little bit of red to that gold that I've got in those grasses. A little bit of cold wax. And I'm going to bring some reds in. And I'm not thinking detail or anything yet. I can always go back with opaque paint and small brushes and add all the grasses and all the detail I want right over the top of this. This is still just kind of establishing my big shapes, my big colors. Cold wax is fun. It's much slower and much more controllable, and it definitely has kind of, if you've ever, recently colored with your kids or grandkids or whatever, and the crayons are a slow move. They have a drag to them. And it definitely kind of has that feel. Like you're having to push it a little further versus like a slick oil paint or paints with a lot of slimy medium in them. Isn't that interesting? It is as basic as can be. I've just done very little, but all of a sudden there is a sense of depth, a sense of space, a sense of movement, somewhere for my eye to go, a touch of a focal point there. I can even take my paper towel. I'm not even going to use paint thinner. We'll see what happens. And I'm just going to bring in some white clouds just by simply getting back to what's underneath. Just reminds me of a nice spring day. Makes me want to throw some poppies in here and call it a Monet painting.
Do it.
Do you really think that tonalist paintings, you were saying like by incorporating the blue sky, that kind of makes it not so much tonalist, but does that really kind of push it away from tonalism completely? Obviously if you put the poppies in, then you're starting to go a whole different way.
Right. But yeah. The truth is I don't usually care. Like, I don't care if anybody, walks up to my paintings and is like, that's not a, tonalist. That's not an illuminist painting. Oh, that's not true impressionism. I don't care. I want to make pretty pictures. I'm just using tonalism for you guys to talk about design and value structures. And so, if you're fighting your inner colorist, don't, if you want to make them colorful and happy and pretty, that's up to you. I do love more subdued paintings. When paintings get overly vibrant for me, like the phthalo colors and, the pure chroma colors, they just don't feel like my paintings. They're not paintings that are attractive to me as much, but that's so independent. We're all so different that you can decide.
Yeah, I in a couple of the things that I've sort of been working on, I felt like again, like I said, I have a ton of these like really big landscape pictures with, there are luckily a lot of blue skies. Because you know, those days are beautiful days.
Yeah.
But you know, trying, one thing I've been struggling with is trying to make those things, like make the colors across the entire painting read cohesively. Like this one has been super educational, just to see how you're building the tones and kind of like pushing those sections back, because obviously the scale on the things that I'm interested in working on, that yeah, there's lots of distant horizons and components, and so it's fascinating to see how that's happening. And I hate to say this, greens are really hard.
Why do you hate to say that?
Well, I mean, it's like, well, if you, for someone who loves landscape paintings, it's like, oh no, this huge component of so many landscape paintings, and I feel like I'm struggling with.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no,
You know,
greens are weird and kind of hard for sure. And you'll see in my paintings, I don't have that much green oftentimes, and I don't have that much blue, which is funny, you know, living in Oregon, you know, but I don't know what it is, but I gravitate towards the warm, earthy colors, like the fall, what we kind of perceive as interior decorators, the fall colors, the burgundies and the golds. And I don't know if that's just, you know, the colors my mom had in her house. So you just kind of, you know, that's kind of what you are comfortable with or whatever else. Like my mother-in-law, who used to live with us, in fact, this studio is her old bedroom, she loves color. Like when we, you know, were able to get her own house and everything else, she just couldn't wait to have big splashes of color, because she always complained that our house, the walls are gray and, you know, the furniture is burgundies and browns, and she just couldn't wait to, you know, have her own house and be able to paint it vibrant and colorful. And, you know, whenever I would ask her for feedback, which, you know, was always a fool's errand on my part, she, you know, inevitably would say, not enough color. It makes me sad to look at your painting. It needs color and happiness. And, you know, and I know what she means, but it's just something that's a comfort level thing. You know, so you gotta be careful of who you ask for advice.
no, sure. But it is helpful to see how, like, even just right now, kind of using those blues over the greens to kind of develop the depth and shadow. And I mean, it also just makes the painting read in a much more cohesive way too. You don't end up with this
big jumps.
Yeah, like a blue sky and then a green line, and it's really tying it together. And I think I've maybe been struggling.
I'll take some blue, mix it with just a little bit of the green, just a touch, but it's more on the blue side. And I'm going to bring that to the tops of the trees where they are superimposed over the sky. And it makes these nice transition colors. Isn't that kind of cool? So a lot of times when I do my transitions, I'll have the warms, you know, the reds and the oranges,
Yeah,
just like I did in the last painting, but I can also do it inversely with the blues.
yeah. And it just makes there's a kind of like an atmospheric, kind of develops depth in the sky, and it's really,
yeah. Go ahead and bring a touch of pink along the tops of these trees back here, and let's just see what happens. You know, again, we are playing, we are experimenting. I can still wipe this back off. Can you see that, or is it not showing
yeah.
up?
Yeah, no, I can see it at least. I mean, to get a feel for it. Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Just kind of a little band of warmth. I'm going to remove most of it. I just took a clean brush is all I did there, just to control it. And I'm going to bring down a little bit warmer, and let's just see again what happens. You know, and it might be too much. I'll have to step back, but I've got a little bit of time. Could probably, you know, I could hint at some of that warmth in here as well if I wanted to, but I kind of am liking the bluey greens that are showing up.
I mean, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is I was really thinking I would have to create multiple colors of green to go over the top here, but it's actually working because of the transparency, and the black that's underneath wants to read as a dark blue. So the greens are going to these kind of dark spots, and then where it's more transparent, especially like up here, yeah, it's doing interesting things. I'm going to bring a little bit of the gold that I had in the grasses, and I'm just going to see what happens if I bring it across the tops of the trees a little bit. Again, kind of harmonizing the whole scene. You know, I can make it jumpy or I can make it a little more harmonized. I just want to see, you can always push that back.
What color is that?
That's the gold that was in the grasses in the first place.
At least on to me, it's that just like changed the time of day.
Right.
I added
More, didn't
like earlier in the painting, it was more, you know, bluebird part of the day. And now it's kind of like it was a bluebird day. And now you're getting that like golden light at the tops of the trees as the sun.
Also changes the season a little bit.
Yeah.
Really pretty.
Yeah, that after like heavy afternoon light where
I liked it more. For one, I like the term bluebird. I don't know if I know that term, the bluebird part of the day.
bluebird skies. It's kind of a outdoor reference, but yeah, that like when the sky is just that perfect blue.
Love it. Bluebird. I want to name this painting that. So I'm going to go back to blue. Bluebird day. I like that. Yeah, so I can, let's see what happens if I add white to that gold. Maybe a touch of pink. I'm going to bring a band of that across where a little bit of the light is kind of, you know, just a touch stronger. Or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but the yellow is the first color to fall away in our perception of depth, and then red and then blue. That's why things in the distance will often appear blue. It's the length of the wavelengths of the color, as far as I understand it. I should figure out a better way more scientific way to describe that. But I'm going to pinken up the grasses a little bit pinker and a little bit lighter, a little bit on the grayer side as they recede back. Yeah, that kind of works, doesn't it? So the yellows kind of are right along this band. It starts off this kind of browny, dry, like we're seeing the sides of the grasses, and then we're seeing the tops of the grasses as they recede back, and it's a little yellower, then it goes to a slightly pinker, and then it goes back to almost a kind of a gray, like there's a touch of cool haze back there on the ground. And right now, my Queen Anne's lace are all just gold because I painted that gold over the top of them. And I almost don't mind it. I actually, because it harmonizes so nicely. So I'm going to experiment again and just see what happens if I pull off some of that color and get it back to a white. I don't want to bring all of it off because I think that'll look too odd.
That
If it
is
gets
so
too
nice.
vibrant, I'll just like if these whites are all of a sudden too standing out too much. Ooh, I kind of like it. I have to step back and see, does this look too spotty? And Linda, you see how the Queen Anne's lace is kind of, it's not just kind of dot, 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 but it kind of has some like sense. And they're going to be a little more spaced out closer you get because, you know, there's more space between them. And then as they go back, oftentimes, the flowers will appear to get a little closer just because the illusion of space between them.
Yes, thanks. Thank you.
Artist that I would recommend you guys look at as far as flower painting, if you wanted to do big fields of flowers, is Ramona Youngquist. She is actually, and I should ask you guys all to do that, and maybe that'll be part of your homework, is look to Ramona Youngquist. She's a good friend of mine, an amazing painter. Definitely, you wouldn't think of her as a tonalist when you see her paintings, but she actually is one of the artists that I paint outside with oftentimes, Brenda, Don, and Ramona. And watching how Ramona starts her paintings, she actually starts them as monochromatic tonalist paintings almost every single time. And then if you see how her paintings end up with these vibrant reds, and if you've been in my classes before, you will have seen I use her work as examples. But anyways, why I'm bringing her up is she is willing to be a guest speaker on this class if we would like to talk to her. I would have her visit for a half hour, and we could talk to her and see if she has some paintings that are kind of in process and talk a little bit. And she's just a sweetheart of a person. She's wonderful.
Oh, yes, that would be super.
She never, ever, 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 ever has taught. Never.
Oh,
Just refuses to. So you guys will be the only people that will ever have gotten lessons from her, except for
yay, yay.
she's nice enough to give feedback when we're out in the field. But I think I own 3 of her paintings, and they're just lovely. In fact, we have
Yeah,
a great big top of our.
She has some at Elements, right?
What's that?
Elements in Newburgh, isn't she there?
She is, yes. She's the big one in there. She has a number of paintings in the Newburgh Hospital and stuff. Yeah, she's a superstar. She's amazing. And she always, her paintings are pretty similar. She really loves rural farm scenes, and they almost always have a beautiful white, like craftsman style house in them. I love it. Great. Well, that was absolutely fun. I'm going to stop, but I could totally come back in with, my fine brushes and start getting some interesting independent grasses. And I actually do kind of like the Queen Anne's lace with the white.
Yeah.
But yeah, that actually worked out great. So whoever brought up the cold wax, I really appreciate it. That totally opened up a whole new game for me. That was totally fun. So thank you.
Yeah, beautiful painting. I love the way the trees advance and recede.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, and I could bring in, some brownie reds into those if I wanted to, and really push that. I mean, I could make them fall colors. You have so much. I'm going to actually see what the reference actually looks like. I didn't even grab it. I haven't grabbed it for either of the paintings. Let's see if I can find it. And just so you guys know, how I keep my references is a 3-ring binder. So I have a huge box full of all my references, but the ones that are kind of in process or paintings that I'm contemplating doing, oh, there it is right there. So it could definitely, this is much more warm as far as the grasses are much more on the red side, but I actually kind of like this. And this is sunrise. So, I like this, how it's going. So I'll probably keep that, but maybe I'll revisit it and make it something more in these colors. But anyways, what I do is these plastic sleeves, the clear plastic sleeves that go in a 3-ring binder, I just slide all my photos in there. And so everything's kind of organized. Actually, a bunch of the references that we've been discussing in class here. Anyways, just kind of keeps me from having piles like this everywhere.
Do you print those yourself, like on a photo printer, or do you get them printed?
So my HP printer, I have a Canon printer here in the office or in my whatever studio. And then in my other studio, I have a HP printer. I think it's called like Photo Smart or something like that. And I pay a monthly subscription for ink, which is $10. And it lets me print up to like almost it's almost like 100 pages of paint of prints for $10 a month. So for me, that's totally worth it. But otherwise, just send them to Costco or wherever and get them printed. It's only, 30 cents or whatever for the small sizes, an 8x10, maybe $1, which is probably truthfully cheaper than printing it at home, and you get it on nice photo paper. Oftentimes when I do send to Costco, I'll get it printed matte so that I don't have a whole bunch of glare on it with the high gloss that they like to do the photos on. But yeah, I do print. I don't print as much because my monitor is right to the right of me where I'm standing. So a lot of times I will use the monitor because I do like my images backlit, as well as the ability to zoom in or turn it to black and white or whatever else. Sometimes I'll even flip the reference on the monitor sideways or even upside down and literally, turn this upside down so that I'm seeing it more abstractly. I'm seeing, I'm not looking for trees and grasses and flowers. I'm just seeing dark shapes versus light shapes versus warm shapes versus cool shapes versus, you know what I mean? So anyways, great. Well, I guess now I'm going to bring up the next one, and let's take another 5-minute break. And so I can clean the palette and kind of get set up. I'm going to do this one in my more typical Indian yellow, and I got to zoom out because this one's bigger. Feels so big after painting a little 8" by 8" guy. This one's a 12 by 16, and I can lower it too. So. I'm excited. I've been wanting to paint on this one all week. I've been fighting myself like, no, we save it for the students. So you guys are lucky that I haven't painted it yet. Anyways, what time is it? It is 11:02. Let's 5-minute break, and let me clean up my palette, and we'll be right back. Great. So with this one, feel free to give feedback and ideas, but what my initial idea is, I'm going to use some of those golds and browns down into my grassy area, and then my Indian yellow along the light area here. And it'll get cooler going towards grays up here, and then more kind of red purples along this cloud bank here. Okay, I am going to try to keep this one a little more on the tonalist feeling side. I also would like to experiment with this Italian green umber, which is a tube I don't even know how I have. But I never use it. So I would like to experiment with that to bring in some sense of greens. It's a very warm, earthy green. It's not vibrant at all. It also says that it's not transparent, but that it's semi-transparent. So this is an acrylic, black and white underpainting. It's dried for a full week. So I'm not worried at all about it moving. When we're doing this acrylic underpainting, we want to make sure that we let it dry for at least 2 days. And drying is not enough, right? Acrylics will feel dry in about 15 minutes, 30 minutes. But we want it to actually have time to cure, right? So that's really important. The other thing to remember that is very important, and please make a note of this, is when we are doing oils over acrylics, they can get micro cracks. So we don't want to do just direct paint on top. We do want to add a touch of medium, approximately about 5 to 10% of medium mixed in with those oil paints will stop the paints from cracking. I do have cold wax up here, as well as I'm going to put a little bit of the Galkid gel. And this is the pile of the different mediums mixed together here. So I've got a little bit of Galkid gel, a little bit of clean cold wax, and a little bit of just the mediums from the previous little painting that we glazed over. So it's a little bit on the dirtier side, a little bit of kind of browny, looks kind of like a dirty snow on the side of the road there. Again, my colors is I've got an opaque white, which I'll use to go over the after I've glazed the first bit. So that's titanium for me. I like titanium white. It's kind of the middle white. It's not warm or cool. It's just kind of middle of the road. I do have this one's just called, literally, I think it's just called like yellow. It's some kind of cheap kids oil paint. I don't know if it's semi-transparent or anything, but I'm going to use it as a fairly opaque. My Indian yellow, very, very transparent. It is a wonderful glazing color. My quinacridone red. You notice I don't have any cadmium reds up here right now. I could add it, but I wouldn't want to use that as a glaze. I would use that as when I go back in and add more opaque layers. This is ultramarine blue, the more purpley blue, very transparent. This is manganese blue hue. Also, this one's the blue that leans towards a bright green, and it's very transparent. Over here, I've got, these are my guest colors. I have a gold ochre. Again, ochre is not a transparent color, but gold ochre, at least by Gamblin, is a transparent color. And then we've got our transparent earth red, which under other brands would be called oftentimes oxide brown or oxide red. And then this random color that I know probably nobody has by Michael Harding is called Italian green umber. And I can tell by the label, they paint their labels, and it shows how transparent it is because I can see through it to the stripes underneath.
Michael,
Right.
Michael, as you progress in this painting, would you address fat over lean?
Fat over lean, good question. So I'm going to keep my medium pretty sparse, and I'm going to push my paint pretty far, keeping it not really thick. You saw in the last little demo that I did how quickly I was able to glaze in and then start adding opaque paint right over the top of it. So by keeping it, my glaze really quite thin, meaning that I've pushed it really far, right, by scrubbing it on there. And by adding just a little bit of medium, I'm able to add paint right on top. As I build up those layers, I may want to err by adding a little more medium to it. And I'm also going to change my pressure that I'm applying the paint. It's going to become a softer touch as I'm building that paint from the thinner paint to the thicker paint, or from the leaner paint to the fatter paint, whichever terminology you like. As in the beginning, I use very little medium. I'm gonna err probably at about 5 to 10% mixed in with the paint. I can also add a little bit of my paint thinner or Gamsol to the mixture, and that will also make it a little bit leaner. Does that make sense? That was a great question, and thanks for reminding me to bring that up. I am going to hopefully have a fairly clean brush. It's got a little bit of blue in it. Let me give it one more quick cleaning into my paint thinner, squeezing that out with my paper towels. You can see that there's blue on the paper towel, so I don't want blue yet because I want some nice bright yellows in here. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my brightest color. Use my Galkid gel, dip just the corner of my paintbrush into some paint thinner. So now I've got a little bit of a puddle kind of here. Grab some of my Indian yellow. Very, very, very warm color. Let me also grab that reference if I can find it really quickly. So the reference I used was truly a black and white, but this is the same morning, and I really like these warms versus the grays and stuff. So I'm gonna put this beside me so I can kind of see it.
Hey, Michael,
Yes. Yes.
We can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me?
No, we can hear you, Michael, but not.
okay, so I didn't unmute, I just pressed the bar down. So the question is, that picture, black and white, dried for 2 weeks, because it was 2 classes ago, and you would not just take and paint over it, you would have to mix each color with a medium, so down the road it doesn't crack, to clarify my thinking.
Yes, a little bit of medium will really help not cracking. It adds to the elasticity. It's also on a board.
Oh, I
So-
hear.
Yeah, so if you're using a canvas, you may not want to use the cold wax at all.
So just to clarify my thinking, you wouldn't take like liquid and go over the whole painting to prevent cracking. You would just use it in the color, the Galcut or the liquid, while you are applying the paint like you're doing now.
Yeah, that is my understanding of the literature that I've read, the experiments that the paint manufacturers have been doing. That's my understanding of it. I've tried reading it and rereading it, and it's kind of new research. Truly, they for a long time said that no, oils will not crack over the top of acrylics, but they are finding micro cracks.
Oh boy. Okay.
To more issues down the road. Look at that. Boom, son. Add a little more medium, not much more color. I just want a little more medium to spread that color around a little further. I'm keeping it lean in this case by simply scrubbing it on there, making sure that it's really thinly, I'm just taking and pushing that color almost as far as I can until it really starts to come off the brush, like it's not on the brush anymore. All right, it already has a completely different feel than it did, right? Definitely on the warmer side. I'm gonna go ahead and take a paper towel and kind of remove it from a couple of the gray areas a little bit. I'm not worried about it being on there a little bit, but I want to preserve some of these areas that are gonna get cooler and a little further from the light source. Kind of back in here. I also just felt like that yellow was a little too intense. That's feeling a little better to me. A little more. And I'm just doing a light pressure right now when I'm wiping away. I'm also, by just simply taking my brush and my paper towel over it, I'm absorbing some of the medium as well, so it'll be a little less slick if I want it to be. The next color I'm going to come into it with is my quinacridone red, and let's go ahead and use the same brush a little bit here. Grab some more medium, maybe a tiny bit of the cold wax, which will slow it down a touch. All right, so what's going to happen when I bring in red?
Peach.
Peach and orange. Yep, exactly. And I'll show you something here in just a second, or maybe you're already beginning to see it. When I bring, you remember I wiped away up here, so I got kind of back to the black and white painting. When I add that red over that area, it'll go towards purple a little bit, because again, the black will read as kind of a blue. So just, you know, that'll come from trial and error and just kind of just watching, observing what happens as you do the glazing, what's happening, because, you know, as much as black and white should be kind of colorless, it inevitably does have this feeling of color. The black or the grays, well, feel like blues. Cleaning that brush off, because I've got a lot of color on there right now that I mixed a little more red in there than I had intended. Not a big problem. I'm just going to clean the brush and then I'll use the red that's on there and just kind of soften that so it's not so in your face. Doesn't look like I went and spread lipstick on top of all the trees. Just kind of bringing in what's left on that brush into some of those yellows to make them not quite so severe, not quite so bright. Again, these transparent colors have a lot of pigment to them oftentimes. So, you know, a little bit can really go a long ways sometimes. So just being aware of that. You know, if you want it really strong, that's fine. But just, you know, if you don't, just clean your brush and, you know, use a little less. I've got kind of spots of color that are a little stronger than I want. So just kind of blending those out, softening them a little. I'm going to go ahead and remove a little more yellow, just lightly using my paper towel. And I'm not doing a really consistent pressure. I'm kind of bouncing it around a little bit so that it doesn't, so I'm not just making lines with my fingers as I remove the paint. I want it to stay pretty organic feeling. All right, let's bring in some of this gold now, the gold ochre. Look at this yellow trying to get away. I probably won't bring this into the sky, or if I do just a little bit. So I did know that I made my darks too dark under here. And I was intending kind of to go back and lighten them, and then decided, you know what, I'm going to do it with the opacity of the oil paint as I see I need to. And so right now I'm just doing the glaze, which will harmonize the color. And then I can go over the top of that and push them back, which just like we did with the both of the last two demos that we did here in class.
And then
Remember,
that
Go ahead.
gold ochre over the black acrylic underpainting, then like you said, it, because it perceives it as kind of a blue, now it's happily making it a little green.
Yes, I like that it's happily doing it. Yes, I agree. Very nice. I'm getting lucky so far. A little bit of the earth brown, because again, I'm gonna just bring in and warm up and darken and just bring some of these grasses so they feel like they're coming maybe hopefully towards us a little more. Kind of destroyed my illusion of green a little bit, didn't I, Michelle? Putting that red over the top. So maybe I'll bring some of that back by maybe clearing out a little bit of the reddish brown. But I do like
Like what
it's
it did to the path.
Yeah, it looks great on the path. So let's go ahead and take a step back and wipe some of this off in where the grasses would be. Not all of it, because I want a little bit of that kind of ready warmth, but I'm going to take some of that off. See, and get back to that gold. Get back to what we perceived as kind of a green by letting the transparent goldy yellow sit on top of the blacks. Back and forth. So that's what I really do love about this, is that, you know, I like to joke that I paint in oils because I need to be forgiven. I need to be able to experiment and play and just kind of see what's happening. And with oils, we're kind of allowed that time to go back and forth. And especially when you have a nice structure of lights and darks underneath, you kind of get your design and your values established. You kind of get that little bit more time to just play with the colors and the temperature shifts. Let's bring in a tiny bit of ultramarine blue and maybe mix that with a touch of the earth red so that it's not just blue. And I'm going to darken some of this foreground just so that it wants to come forward. Just see that? You see that? Just that brush stroke? How all of a sudden that wants to come forward? Isn't that interesting? Letting this silly house painting brush do some of the work for me by kind of pushing it in, letting those bristles, you know, I could be using one of my really lousy shop brushes. Yeah, there we go. This would be a good one where the bristles are all uneven and broken off. Maybe that'll be lean towards texture a little more. There we go. Plus it's a little smaller, so I can get a little more hinting of detail, right? We're doing implied detail. Maybe I took my darks back a little too far here. So I'm just going to wipe that back away. I want it to be really kind of in your face here and then quickly going back into depth. And we're going to even push this band of darks back here in just a little bit. We're going to push them further into the space, into depth by simply, what are we going to do that? How am I going to push this band of trees back here back?
Gray it down.
Gray it down. And I can use some really beautiful kind of purple grays when you have that kind of band of transition from warms down to cooler pinks and purples. I'm going to have this great opportunity to put a little band of purple back here, which really, we'll see. It'll be a gray purple, and let's just see if I can get away with that. Might really sing. I love it when you're painting away and you're already looking forward to the next little piece that you get to paint. It's like, oh, I can't wait to get some of this done so that I can get up there and then hopefully really start to blow open the sense of perspective and depth. So already that feels really quite green. So it's like got a field of kind of drier tops of grasses, and then this is the side of the road where maybe the tractors have driven and kind of kept it down a little shorter, so it's still kind of the darker grasses on top. I'm going to add a little bit of that gold onto little passages of it. All right. Ready or not? Here we go. Let's push, get some bluey grays back here and see what happens. Kind of a purple, blue, gray. So I've made kind of a dark purple up here. I don't want it nearly that dark, so I'm going to add some white to it. Now you can really see how vibrant of a purple that is. So if I'm just going to do a test, I know this won't work, but let's see what happens if I put that on there. What I'm imagining it's going to do is blow the illusion of naturalness away. Oh, maybe it's not as bad as I thought. Let's see if I can get away. Maybe lighten that up a little bit. Sometimes it's really fun to have a nice little band of color. Wow. I kind of feel like it's letting me get away with a lot more color than I thought I was going to be able to back here. What do you think? Is that too strong? Let's gray it down a little bit.
I like it.
Yeah, I kind of like it too. It's fun to test, right? You know, and just
Yeah.
see, can I get away with this? Is this painting gonna can this painting handle this color? Is it gonna let me?
Would that be then a mountain back there?
What's that?
Are those still trees back there? It almost made it look for a second like a mountain.
I'm imagining that as kind of a band of trees way back there, but yeah, it could be. I mean, yeah, I know that it's trees because I walked down this road.
It almost looks like another city.
Right.
Like you're taking a road and there's the city in the back, like the West Hills when you're in the city.
Right, yeah. Definitely see that.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous.
I'm gonna bring a band of kind of bright pinky purple right on top of that. And again, just kind of testing, can I? You know, if you let me do that, can I do this? And we will see. One of my favorite questions, not only in painting, but in life, is kind of the what if? What if this, I tried this? Right? It's just a painting for one. For two, I can erase it. It's oils. I can get back to my fundamental design and structure.
I like that.
Yeah.
Don't take it off. It's good.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I kind of like it too.
It's like it's like that early morning light that just, you know, where it's just that purpley pink and then it goes like golden and
Yeah,
oh.
and that is exactly what it is. I mean, the sun is just rising back there behind these clouds. I got out there before sunrise, which I love the colors right before sunrise. I love the subtlety of the ground before it's getting blasted by light. Just to kind of harmonize this tree with these other guys. It's going to be darker because it's closer. A little less atmosphere between me and it, or us and it. So fun just to kind of just see. I really didn't think these purples and pinks would play nicely on this, but so far I'm feeling okay about it.
It's that trick of that quinacridone red that you put in the sky above. It's all in harmony. Look at it.
Right,
Go
yeah.
back and look at it. It's just so perfect harmony.
Oh, thank you.
That could be a melody.
Right, yeah. What kind of music would you like? What would be kind of the feeling of music, melody?
This painting.
Yeah.
Just sweet little notes, you know. It's just the red in the sky is so subtle, but yet it's there, and it doesn't take away. It just enhances. It's reflected on the horizon. The horizon is, I don't know, when the sun comes over the earth in the morning, I see this round kind of shape in the glow. Yeah, and it's all kind of rainbow colors. It's so beautiful.
So down in the reflections, I'm just kind of slightly warming up the reflected color. And add a touch of atmosphere, kind of a fog, hopefully sitting back there. So on the grasses, on the field where the field meets the trees. We'll keep the theme going of kind of this pinky purpley gray color and see, again, I'm just testing, can I get away with this? Are you going to let me have this much fun little painting? It's all right if you're not like.
That is good fun. I love it.
It's fun. All right. Now I'm going to dissipate that as it comes a little lower because I don't want just a band of fog back there. So I'm going to take that and I'm just going to softly bring it down. It's also kind of in the front of the base of this tree. Going across my path, maybe a little bit in the front of these trees, maybe a little bit of fog. It's going to lighten some of these darks back here. Fog kind of lightens things, obliterates edges. It's just fun to get out there and observe what is the fog doing, especially when it's backlit. Oh man, fog can just be so interesting. I gotta kind of go, okay, where is my fog? How close am I gonna let it get? This might be a good opportunity to have my transparent white, which I don't know where it is. I can still just kind of obliterate some of those edges. Obliterate's a tough word. Soften. Just kind of wants to keep coming down. Every time I step back, I'm like, oh, I can bring my fog a little bit closer. And I've got to say that I think the cold wax medium is kind of helping the effect a little bit. It's getting that kind of soft, gossamer, like we talked about, eggshell kind of a feel to it. So again, whichever one of you asked about glazing or mentioned glazing with the cold wax, and I am mixing a little bit of the Galca gel in with it, but what fun. All right, so I'm kind of liking, I think, what's going on in here. I'll kind of leave that for now and then kind of play with some of these other areas and see what's going on. Like I do want to push the rim light along this cloud here. So let me go ahead and clean a brush. I'm gonna mix a little bit of that Indian yellow, a little bit of white, make it a very bright, kind of a warm yellow. Mix some of that cold wax, touch of the other medium. Well, let's see, let me grab my reference again. So now I am going to more opaque oil paint, adding it on a little thicker, and I'm just going to play with that because I don't want it to just all be kind of scrubbed on there. I have different textures, different opacities. Paint, different textures of paint. even though I'm applying the paint even thicker now, I can still get back in with my paper towels or my palette knife and take this back off if I really feel like I'm doing something that's not working. I want to give it a fair shake, give it a chance. Might be too punchy. We'll see. It's a lot as I step back.
Beautiful.
Brush.
I love that purpley blue spot up on the right that picks up the purpley, no, way up in the sky. Yeah, right there, all down there, and it catches the blue in the horizon. And you have it in a couple of other spots across the top. It's absolutely perfect.
Oh, thank you.
To me,
I'm
anyway,
noticing
right
that
now. It's
this yellow is wanting to go to green. So I'm going to wipe down some of that yellow and bring it back towards kind of the pink, the purple, the reds, just so it doesn't go to green. Because yeah, you see all of a sudden there's these spots of green. They're
yeah,
showing up where that yellow kind of got over the top of that black or dark gray. And so I got to be aware of that. But you see, this doesn't want to read as so green. So I'm just gonna
right. I see that.
It's easy to deal with, I hope, he says before he tests it. But let's see if I can get, I need a clean brush. Let's go ahead and be lazy and just grab another brush. Let's get a little bit of that red on there, and that red will knock that green back really quickly. I'm just kind of looking really quickly, just saying, where's reading like green that I don't want it? Throwing a little bit of red on there. And we'll, don't worry, I'm not going to leave it with these bright bands of red. All right, and I'll go ahead and wipe that. Let me put down all the brushes I'm holding. Wipe that red brush that I just used way down. So it hardly has any color. Get a touch of medium back on there. And that's just got about 10 more minutes here. So that looks pretty crazy. So now I'm going to take my paper towel and wipe those red areas back so they're not so in our face. Apologize for my arm getting in the way here. I'm going to go ahead and dip my paper towel in a little bit of medium, just because this is really coming off strong here. So mix the medium into that. Just kind of like I'm waxing furniture, like somebody mentioned earlier. Yeah, that's nice, actually. I'm pushing it into the paint. Oh, I like that. I've never tried that technique before, adding a little bit of medium to the actual paper towel and then pushing that into the paint. All right. Getting a little bit rough on me there. I'm kind of losing it, so I'm just going to go ahead and just, there we go. Well, that's funny. Wherever I pushed in with the medium, it's really wanting to come off now. So I took it all the way back. So interesting. All right. So the whole idea of my putting the medium on the paper towel and really pushing it in did not quite work because I just cleared the paint right off. Good to know. Live and learn. Paint and learn. Wow, now the surface is very slick there. I think after class, I may get to repaint my sky one more time because what I just did with the wax really made it, it just went straight to the underpainting and made it very bright. I mean, very slippery. So a little bit of paint thinner will take that wax back off. And let's try it one more time before I run out of time here in class. Let's go back to my reds and see if I can't get some of that back. I'm really utilizing the ability to go back and forth, make mistakes, hopefully be able to kind of fix them, change my mind, try something else.
Craig? Whoops, I got the mute. Sorry, Michael.
You're all right.
Will you eventually seal this with a varnish?
Yeah, I would have to. Yeah, otherwise it'll be very matte. But yeah, I'm having a good time. I feel like I kind of lost it a little bit. Like the last couple of things I tried to do in the sky kind of ruined the sky a little bit, but I'm not too worried. I'll be able to pull some of that back here. I know that. And again, I can always just paint over it with my oils.
It's
Making
never,
oil
it's never a mistake. You only learn lessons. That's
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 right.
my motto. You just learned a
Live.
lesson and you taught us so very well what not to do.
There you go. Thank you so much. It's, yeah, what is it? We win or we learn is what my wife says.
That's it. You have a good wife.
Yes, I do. I have a great wife.
She's smart.
That is very true.
And it's still beautiful. I see that it's going to, when you show us the finish, it's going to be wonderful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm having a good time. And I actually do. I love the mid area here. I think that, you know, I've not, yeah, this will be just fun. I'll just get to come in and paint over the top. Got some kind of brown where I mixed all the colors along the periphery. So I'm just going to kind of remove that. Yeah, it's great. And it's definitely a very nice underpainting, right?
It's beautiful.
Will you start with the Indian yellow and white kind of as correction when you do go back into paint, or will you start with the purpley darks?
Yeah, that is a good question. I typically like to paint kind of from dark to light, especially after doing the glazing, to kind of figure out my structure again. But yeah, we will see. That is a good question, though. I think, yeah, I would probably bring in the bluey grays that I kind of want into here, kind of the blue-green grays, and then figure out what is the color that I actually want this, because the Indian yellow just over the top is nice and glowy, but I don't think it's the right color. I feel like it's too severe for, it feels more like a really exciting sunset versus a kind of calm, quiet sunrise. So, you know, I can just kind of keep getting in there. That already feels better, just having taken down some of the warmth a little bit. It's not so hot. Yeah. And it's nice. The Indian yellow has definitely been there long enough now that it's stained the surface. There we go. I'm already starting to like that more. That's starting to feel better. Cool. All right. Well, lots of lessons today. Lots of things. We did glazing 3 different paintings today. So started here, a little black and white oil painting, went to kind of a, I mean, this could be what, very early in the morning where the sun is just beginning to light up the sky, but still ducked down behind. And that's kind of where I got the ideas for the purples, because I kind of liked it there. And then we were able to use some of that here. And then demo number 2, which I really enjoyed. And that's where we introduced the idea of using cold wax as a glazing medium. And then I really do like that one. We're already named this one, right? Bluebird Morning, is that what it's called?
Yes. And I like it. I like your rendition better than your what you use to go by. That's
thank you for the
much more
reference.
definition in it. Beautiful.
Yeah, and that's, you know, again, my references, I mean, a lot of times they are just black and white. And you're just using what you like, disregarding the rest. It's just a jumping off point, a point of inspiration. And so, yeah, lots of liberty. Make this painting your own and have fun. And then, so next week we will go over the 4 values in landscape painting and talk, and we will, so anyway, so next week's lesson is already planned. This takes definitely longer than I thought. So I would love for you to do the glazing over a black and white acrylic painting or whichever ones, and then go ahead and do some opaque, you know, more thicker oil painting over the top of that. So and you're free to do 1 of them or 2 or 3 or however many you feel like you would like to do.
Wonderful.
Thank you guys so much. That
Superb
was a ton of
class.
fun.
Very
Yeah.
superb class, very, very important class this time. It's very.
Great, and I don't always use glazing, of course. Well, I also don't paint black and white underneath all the time, but it's a great way to learn our values, our design, and our structure. And again, you saw how free I was to experiment with adding colors and trying different things. So anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And
Oh God, yes.
we all learned together today.
Very good class.
Wonderful class.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
It was phenomenal.
My pleasure. You guys are
Bravo.
awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bravo.
Thank
That's
you.
right.
All right, well, we'll get this recorded and put up online here soon. So anyways, keep sharing on Facebook. You guys are awesome. I see you guys already giving each other feedback and cheering each other on. And I love that. That's fantastic. So, and we can learn so much from each other as well as just from
Oh,
these
I agree.
lessons. So
I agree.
learn all week long. You guys are awesome. Thank you. So great to see everybody.
Same.
Thank you. Great
Thanks,
meeting.
Michael.
Take
Be
care.
well. Be well.
Be well.